I often feel like I'm rolling a ball up a hill and it just keeps getting steeper. The more improvements I make, the more things I find that need improving. Then again, I don't know if you can do anything about that. A new steering rack, way faster steering ratio, way newer part, and in all reality, it should be more fun than it was before. But it's not. Hop in the car long enough to reach a corner and you'll know exactly why. Not only does the car lack power steering now, but it gets worse. Even with a bad alignment, your steering should self-center, and this car's absolutely doesn't. And that's the real mystery. In theory, none of these problems should even happen. The rack was certified rebuilt by a reputable company, and all the lines are ran properly for power steering. So in other words, I guess the rack swap was the equivalent of opening Pandora's box. I'm wondering what's the point of even having the new rack if it doesn't even work, and the only answer I can think of is that there isn't one. So if I want to keep it in the car, I need to figure out why. The way I see it, there are two options. We could spend, in all honesty, who knows how long diagnosing and fixing whatever issue this car is currently having, or we could just toss the old rack back on and call it a day. But I think I know that's not happening, which only leaves one option. We've got a mystery on our hands. What's the culprit? How do I fix it? Those are things I don't know yet. What I do know is how the car currently feels, and the best way to pinpoint a problem is to look at all your symptoms. The issue is clearly steering related, and it wasn't here before we swapped the rack. The only thing we know is true is that the car still needs an alignment, but that wouldn't cause all these symptoms. For starters, the lack of power steering. It takes notably more effort to move the wheel at both a standstill and while driving, but the weird thing is it's not as heavy as I would expect for a car with no power steering, which is interesting. And there always could be a leak or air in the system. We did bleed it, but air in the lines would definitely affect power steering. And that's right about where it gets even stranger. With the car running, you can see the fluid move in the reservoir, which makes me think the pump is working. But it also might rule out a leak because there's no aeration in the fluid whatsoever. Normally, air getting into the lines would cause bubbles. Plus, if there was air, when we turned the wheel, we would hear a whine from the pump. And the pump currently sounds just like it did before the swap. Super weird. The power steering issue isn't even the weirdest symptom though. The weirdest part has to do with an issue I've never seen before. When you're driving a working car, whenever you're in a corner and you let go of the wheel, it'll return to center. The car wants to drive straight after all. And an alignment affects this to some degree, but not normally this much. Right now, if you let go of the wheel in the middle of a corner, it'll hold that position almost indefinitely. It will happily turn straight into a ditch without intervention, or it'll let you drive in circles without steering for who knows how long, which is, at the end of the day, absolutely not normal. Is this related to the power steering issue, or do we have two different issues altogether? Is it all because of the alignment? Did we do something wrong? Or did we just get unlucky with parts? Right now, there's no way to tell. But what we can do next is take those symptoms we're experiencing and start trying to pinpoint a culprit. Time to go one layer deeper and start the investigation. For something like this, there's a lot of places I could start, but my favorite place is in the world of research. Before spending all this time, I might as well see if anybody else has had this issue. No use wasting time discovering something if it's already been discovered. Might as well see if we can learn from others. And as it turns out, power steering issues are actually quite common, which does make sense. So I guess the best place to start is to cross off all the basics, and that starts by getting the car in the air. I need to ensure the system's fully bled, that the lines are ran correctly and not leaking, as well as the belt on our power steering pump is not slipping. Any of those could cause a loss in power steering, and they're all easy surface level things to check. Once we know all of these are true, we can jump to the next level of what things could be. And so far, so good. The fluid's topped off, there's no leaks I can see. Even the belt shows no signs of slipping, which on this car would be pretty difficult. In other words, I guess the basics are all accounted for. So maybe it's something a bit more drastic. I mean, as much as I hate to say it, we could always have a part that's failing, or, even worse, we could have been sent a part that doesn't work, as infrequently as that happens. But I don't think I should make that jump just yet. We've still got another symptom to deal with after all, and it seems like people have had issues with that, though it's a lot less common. And it looks like other than a bad alignment and failed parts, it really can only be caused by binding. But maybe they're onto something there. I guess at the very least, we should check the linkage and make sure it's all good there. And that's exactly what I did. While the linkage looked fine, I noticed something a little strange. With the front wheels lifted in the air, when you turn the steering wheel, there's quite a bit of resistance to turn the wheels. But that resistance increases when you shut the car off. So maybe there's some credit behind the binding theory. Maybe our power steering has been working this whole time and it's just bound up before we even get to that. And from a quick search, that seems like it might be what's happening. Some people say a Z3 rack can't fit in an airbag car without cutting the firewall, yet there's one in mine. If you look hard enough, you can even find templates for where to cut, so maybe we should order that and start there. Well, that was fast. But that wouldn't make sense. That box is also way too big. So what's this? Oh yeah, motor mounts. I almost forgot that this car was running a set that was borrowed from a friend. And since I really shouldn't borrow them forever, I ordered these a while back to replace them. But based on how I liked the 95A ones I borrowed, I ended up getting two different options. And these rubber ones weren't my initial choice. The ones that are in the car are 95A, meaning they're about as stiff as you can go for poly bushings. And the noise is absolutely crazy. I didn't want one that hard and it's an easy fix, so I got two different options. An 80A poly set as well as an OE rubber set. And while we see if the steering is binding, we might as well toss these in too. I think the easiest way to tell if we're binding on the firewall is going to be to look at where the steering shaft should pass through the firewall. And the quickest and most cramped way to do that is by taking apart everything under the dash. There's covers and carpets, but once they're removed, we should be able to see if that's the actual issue. Who knows if we'll be able to fix it, but we can at least see if that's something that could be causing a problem. And just from my initial observation, I think we may be onto something. It looks like the steering shaft is grinding its way through the right side of the carpet as opposed to through the hole cut in the carpet. And if the hole underneath it is placed anywhere close to the hole on the carpet, we've got a pretty big issue. And since it's already ground down part of the carpet, removing it just results in it falling to pieces. Super lovely.
Oh, that's good. Came off. That's awesome, actually.
With just a little more room made, we can really see the extent of our issue. It seems to be held so tightly against the firewall that it is grinding not only with the firewall, but also the rubber weather sealing and the bracket that holds that in place, all of which could cause a tremendous amount of tension in the steering itself. I need to see how bad it is though, so first things first, I need to get the cover off, which is a lot easier said than done. I really am shocked this rack fit at all, and that kits that sell parts to swap in an airbag rack don't mention this. You almost have to go out of your way to figure out that this is a thing. But on the other hand, that kind of makes sense because there weren't as many airbag cars as there were non-airbag cars. Everything was so tight that I had a terrible time actually getting the weatherproofing off. Plus, I could hardly fit in the footwell to begin with, so I started taking apart other parts of the interior. I removed this cover as well as the steering wheel itself so I could try and fit just a little bit better in there, but even that didn't help too much. In order to remove the weatherproofing, I went underneath the car again and pulled on it. The issue is it completely disintegrated in the process, and most of it was because of how much of it was ground to bits. This shaft is not only hitting the firewall, but through me driving it has started grinding its way into it. No wonder it felt like there was resistance. This would also completely explain why once I turn the wheel, it holds whatever position it's currently in. And template to cut or not, this is an issue. So the only way we're going to be able to fix it is by cutting a hole with a Dremel and allowing it to no longer impact the firewall. And a lot of this is going to have to come apart anyways when we put the new dust shield in. But we don't have that yet, so for now we're just testing if this works. And now that the shaft is no longer grinding itself into the firewall, we might have made a bit of an improvement. It definitely feels different while in the air, but the only way to really tell if we fixed any issues is going to be to put the car back down and drive it. But since we just grinded a hole into the firewall, I definitely don't want it to rust. And since it's going to be covered by the weatherproofing and a number of different covers, I'm just going to use this black paint over rust coating that I have from the S4 calipers. Even though it's not the right color, this is kind of what this stuff is designed for, and since we have it, we might as well use it. Before we drive the car, and since it's already in the air, we probably should toss in those motor mounts. Like I mentioned before, I actually have two different options we could go with right now. I've got a set of 80A poly bushings as well as an OE rubber set, and really, I'm not sure which one the car will end up with. But since we have both, and it's a pretty easy swap, it really doesn't matter too much. All that I know for sure is that these 95A ones are far too stiff. On cold starts, the amount of vibrations is so crazy that I feel like every bit of the interior is about to fall out of place. The engine is just way louder, but part of me does think it sounds good. The poly bushings I ordered match all the other poly bushings that are on this car already. They are 80A. They're supposed to be quite a bit softer than the ones that are currently on the car, but they're also supposed to be slightly stiffer than the OE rubber ones, which we also have as an option. An OE plus upgrade, in other words. So my thought is that we start with these, and if we really don't like it, we can work our way back to the rubber ones. Super easy swap too, since it's basically one bolt. I finished up swapping the motor mounts and got the car back on the ground. At this point, there was only one thing on my mind. Were we actually able to push the ball any further up the hill? I mean, if this fixes the issues, that's definitely one thing, but either way, we still have more to do. Only one way to find out. The car doesn't really have an alignment yet, so if we want to save our tires, we really shouldn't drive too aggressively, and that makes testing something like this quite difficult, unless there happens to be fresh snow, and your car never had traction to begin with. If that were the case, I think I could think of a couple ways we could test and see if we fixed any of the issues. And would you look at that? Ironically, the day after I fixed the firewall and messed with the motor mounts, that's exactly what happened. And the initial test is more than promising. For starters, the car has power steering, which is a great surprise considering I thought I was just trying to fix the self-centering. It's way more fun this way. And that's the other thing. Even with a poor alignment, the steering self-centers again, which makes sliding around in the snow effortless. It's also a lot safer. Now, when you turn and let go of the wheel, the car will straighten itself out, like it should. It's something you take for granted until it's taken away from you, but now it's back. Did we really make it any further up the hill though? I mean, we've still got the weatherproofing and brake issues to deal with. Even though we fixed an issue, we have more on our to-do list now than we started with. Maybe that's not a bad thing though. I mean, who's to say there's a top to the mountain we're climbing anyways? And it's not like we can know that where we're at. We're still trying to roll the ball up after all. And at the end of the day, that may be beside the point anyways. After all, maybe the climb towards the peak is better than the view itself from the top. Much better to try and enjoy the journey in my opinion. Thank you for watching. If you enjoyed the video, consider dropping a like and subscribing for more. That's the best way you can help support me and my channel. Either way, I'll see you guys in the next episode. Thank you again. Have a wonderful day.